The room fell into an unnatural silence the moment I stepped through the grand double doors of the Manhattan ballroom, my grip firm around the hand of the woman beside me. Eyes widened. Glasses paused halfway to lips. Conversations died mid-sentence. The soft hum of classical music playing from the grand piano in the corner suddenly felt deafening. And then, finally, there was her. My wife, Sarah, stood near the center of the room, a delicate champagne flute in hand. Her lips parted in what I knew was the beginning of some cheerful greeting, until her eyes met mine. The blood drained from her face so fast I thought she might collapse. She blinked rapidly, as if trying to process what she was seeing, as if hoping that the image before her was just a figment of her imagination. But it wasn't. Standing beside me, her fingers lightly gripping my arm, was Jessica Foster, the wife of my wife's lover. The shock on Sarah's face was mirrored only by the expression of the man beside her, Tom Foster, her boss, her secret, her downfall. His jaw clenched, his body tensed, and I could see the moment the realization settled in his mind. He took a half step forward, his eyes darting between me and Jessica, his lips parting, but no words came out. Jessica spoke first. "Surprised to see me, Tom," she said, her voice calm, almost amused. She looked stunning in a sleek black dress, her brown hair cascading over her shoulders, a picture of poise and quiet fury. But I knew better. Beneath her composed exterior was a storm, one that I had helped ignite. Sarah took an unsteady step forward, her voice barely above a whisper. "Jack." I tilted my head slightly, watching her, my expression unreadable. "Oh, don't stop the party on our account," I said, my voice carrying through the room. "We wouldn't want to ruin such a special evening." A murmur rippled through the crowd, some guests shifting uncomfortably, others watching with barely concealed curiosity. They sensed something was off, something darker lurking beneath the surface of this grand corporate event. Sarah's fingers trembled around the stem of her glass. "Jack, what is this?" I let a slow smile creep onto my lips, though there was no humor behind it. "I think you know exactly what this is." Jessica turned to face her husband, her tone still deceptively sweet. "Tell me, Tom, when were you going to tell me? Or were you just planning on keeping up the charade forever?" Tom swallowed hard, his gaze darting to Sarah, then back to me. He was trying to piece together what was happening, but I had the upper hand now. For the first time since I had uncovered their betrayal, I felt something cold and powerful settle in my chest. This was my moment. Sarah shook her head, her voice breaking. "Jack, please, let's talk." "Not here." I let out a quiet laugh, shaking my head. "Not here," I repeated, feigning confusion. "Oh, but here is perfect, isn't it? Right here, in front of all these people, in front of our friends, your colleagues. Isn't this exactly how you wanted to be seen, Sarah?" She flinched, a visible wound forming in her carefully maintained composure. The woman who had once vowed to love me, to be faithful, now stood exposed in front of everyone. I took a slow step forward, feeling the weight of the room pressing down on us. "Let me ask you something, Sarah," I continued, my voice quieter now, almost intimate. "When you kissed him in that hotel lobby, did you think no one would see? When you laughed at his jokes over candlelit dinners, when you let him touch you the way only I was supposed to, did you think I wouldn't find out?" The air was thick with tension. Sarah's lips trembled, and for the first time that night, I saw the fear in her eyes. Jessica exhaled sharply beside me. "You know what the worst part is, Tom," she mused. "I wasn't even going to come tonight. But Jack here, well, he had a better idea." She turned toward me, and I could see the fire burning behind her eyes. "And I must say, it's been quite enlightening." Tom took another step forward, his voice low, desperate. "Jack, don't do this." I smirked. "Oh, Tom," I said softly, "you did this to yourself." For a moment, no one moved. The entire ballroom was holding its breath, caught in the gravity of the moment. Then, as if the weight of my words had finally settled, Sarah's grip on her champagne flute faltered, and the glass slipped from her fingers, shattering against the marble floor. The sound echoed like a gunshot. I leaned in just slightly, my voice low, meant only for her. This is just the beginning. And then, without another word, I turned, leading Jessica toward the exit. The whispers followed us, a murmur of scandal and shock. But I didn't look back. Sarah had made her choice. Now it was my turn. 3 years ago, if someone had told me that my marriage would come to this, exposing my wife's infidelity in front of an entire room of people, I would have laughed in their face. Back then, I had no reason to doubt Sarah. We had built a life together, one that was supposed to be strong enough to withstand anything. I had everything I thought a man could want. A beautiful wife, 2 wonderful children, and a stable career that provided for us comfortably. We lived in a spacious home in the suburbs of Los Angeles, a place where our kids, Lily and Oliver, could play safely in the backyard, where we hosted weekend barbecues, and where every holiday was filled with warmth and laughter. Sarah was the kind of woman people envied. She was charming, intelligent, and effortlessly elegant. People gravitated toward her, drawn in by her charisma and grace. I loved her fiercely, in a way that I thought was unshakable. And for a long time, she loved me back. Or at least, that's what I believed. Every morning started the same way. Lily would rush into our bedroom just as the sun began to rise, jumping onto the bed with endless energy. "Daddy, wake up. It's morning," she would giggle, climbing over me as Oliver toddled in behind her, rubbing his sleepy little eyes. Sarah and I would share a knowing glance, that quiet parental understanding that came with raising 2 young children. She would smile as she pulled Lily into her arms, pressing a kiss to her hair, while I lifted Oliver onto my lap. Those were the moments I lived for. We weren't just husband and wife. We were partners, parents, a team. Sarah had always been a devoted mother. She packed their lunches with little handwritten notes tucked inside, picked out their outfits with care, and sang them lullabies at night. I had admired the way she balanced motherhood and work, the way she made it all look so effortless. We had traditions, things that made us feel like a family. Friday nights were for movie marathons, where we'd spread blankets across the living room floor, eating popcorn while watching animated films. Saturday mornings meant pancakes and music, Sarah dancing in the kitchen while I flipped batter onto the griddle. And Sunday was our sacred day, our family day. We would take the kids to the park, let them run through the grass, and then stop for ice cream on the way home. It was simple, it was real, and it was ours. I never imagined that Sarah would want something more than that. It started so slowly that I almost missed it. At first, it was just small things, things I could have easily brushed off. She would be distracted at dinner, checking her phone more than usual. When I would reach for her hand across the table, she would pull away just a little too quickly. Then came the excuses. "I have to stay late at the office, Jack. We're in the middle of a big project." She had never stayed late before. In the past, she had always made it home in time for dinner, always tucked the kids into bed. But suddenly, she was gone more often than not. At first, I told myself that I was overthinking it, that she was just busy, that she was stressed. But then, I noticed other things. She changed her perfume. She never changed her perfume. She started going to the gym late at night, even though she had never cared for fitness routines before. She bought new lingerie, but it wasn't for me. The intimacy between us began to dwindle, her touches becoming less frequent, her kisses less urgent. When I reached for her in bed, she would shift away, claiming she was tired. Tired. I had no idea at the time that she was simply giving herself to someone else. The moment that truly shattered my sense of denial happened on a Sunday afternoon during one of our family outings. We had just finished playing at the park, and Lily, in all her innocent honesty, looked up at me with her wide, curious blue eyes. "Daddy, did you know Mommy has a new friend?" she asked, her voice light and playful. I frowned slightly, glancing at Sarah, who immediately stiffened. "A new friend?" Lily nodded enthusiastically, swinging her little legs back and forth in her car seat. "Yeah. Mommy took us to lunch with him last week. His name was Tom. He's really funny. He made Mommy laugh a lot." A coldness settled in my stomach. I turned to Sarah, whose hands were gripping the steering wheel too tightly. She refused to look at me. "Who's Tom?" I asked, my voice carefully even. Sarah let out a forced laugh. "Oh, just a colleague from work. It was a lunch meeting, nothing serious." But something about the way she said it, too quick, too defensive, made my stomach twist. I should have pressed her harder. I should have looked deeper. Instead, I let it go. For weeks, I kept convincing myself that Sarah wouldn't do that to me, that she wouldn't betray me, wouldn't risk our children, our life, our family for some office affair. But the late nights became more frequent. The distance between us grew wider. And one evening, after she left for another supposed work event, I finally decided to do what I had been too afraid to do. I picked up my phone and called a private investigator. That was the night my marriage truly ended. That was the night I took my first step toward revenge. The night I called the private investigator, I sat alone in the dimly lit living room, staring at my phone screen, my finger hovering over the call button. My instincts had been screaming at me for weeks, telling me something was wrong, telling me Sarah wasn't the woman I thought she was anymore. I had spent months trying to rationalize the change in her behavior, trying to convince myself that I was being paranoid. But deep down, I knew. I just didn't want to admit it. When the call finally connected, a voice on the other end answered. Carlos Vega, Private Investigations. How can I help you? I swallowed hard, my throat dry. I need to know if my wife is cheating on me. There was no hesitation in Carlos's response. Let's set up a meeting. The next day, I met Carlos Vega at a small cafe downtown. He was a no-nonsense kind of guy, mid-40s, with sharp eyes that had clearly seen too much. He listened to my story without interruption, nodding occasionally, his fingers tapping against his coffee cup. She's being careful, he finally said, after I had laid everything out. If she's been doing this for months, and you haven't caught her yet, she's covering her tracks. That was exactly what I feared. Carlos laid out his plan. He would put a tracker on Sarah's car, monitor her calls, messages, and emails, and have an operative follow her. If she was cheating, we would know soon enough. By the time I left that meeting, my stomach churned with a sick mix of anger and dread. I had just set into motion the process that would either confirm my worst fears or prove me wrong. Part of me hoped I was wrong, but I wasn't. 3 days later, I got the first update. Carlos sent me an email late at night. Jack, we've got something. Attached are photos from today. I hesitated before opening the file, my heart hammering in my chest. When I finally clicked it, my worst nightmare stared back at me. The first photo was of Sarah at a restaurant, sitting across from a man. Not just any man. He was leaning in, his hand resting on hers. She was smiling at him, that same soft, adoring smile that used to be mine. I gritted my teeth and clicked the next photo. This one was worse. It showed them leaving the restaurant, Tom's hand on the small of her back, guiding her toward his car. Sarah didn't flinch. She welcomed it. The final photo stole the air from my lungs. They were in the parking lot, standing close. Too close. Tom cupped her cheek, and she tilted her face up toward him. Then, he kissed her, and she kissed him back. My grip on my phone tightened until my knuckles turned white. I forced myself to keep reading. Carlos had included a short message at the bottom. They left together. Spent an hour at his place. More details to come. That was all I needed to see. The room around me blurred, my vision swimming with a red haze of rage. The next morning, Sarah woke up early, stretching lazily before turning to me with a sleepy smile, as if nothing had changed. "Good morning, babe," she murmured. Reaching out to brush my arm, I forced myself to smile back, to play the role of the clueless husband. "Morning," I said, keeping my voice even. If she noticed the way I stiffened under her touch, she didn't show it. Instead, she kissed me lightly on the cheek before getting out of bed, humming as she walked into the bathroom. I stared at the ceiling, my fists clenched beneath the sheets. She had come home to me after being with another man. She had kissed him, let him touch her, and then walked through our front door like nothing had happened. How long had she been doing this? How many nights had she come home to me with his scent still on her skin? The thought made me feel sick. And the worst part? I still loved her. That realization made me even angrier. Carlos continued his investigation, and the evidence piled up quickly. Within a week, he had a full report. Sarah and Tom had been seeing each other for over 6 months. They had rented hotel rooms together. They had gone on weekend getaways under the guise of work trips. Tom had even bought her expensive gifts, jewelry, perfume, things I had never seen Sarah wear at home. It wasn't just sex. It was a relationship. She was in love with him. That was the final blow. If it had just been a moment of weakness, maybe I could have forgiven her. But this was calculated, deliberate betrayal. I wasn't just losing my wife. I had already lost her. I could have confronted her that night. I could have thrown the photos on the table, demanded an explanation, screamed at her, thrown her out of the house. But I didn't, because that would have been too easy. Sarah had taken months to betray me. She had carefully crafted her lies, built a false reality where she could have both of us, a husband and a lover. So I was going to take my time, too. I wasn't just going to expose her. I was going to destroy her world the way she had destroyed mine. And I was going to make sure she never saw it coming. The moment I decided not to confront Sarah immediately, everything changed. My grief and anger became fuel, sharpening my focus, turning me into something colder, something more calculating. I didn't want just a confrontation. I wanted justice. No, I wanted revenge. She had lied to me, humiliated me, turned me into a fool. And the worst part? She had done it without hesitation, walking through our home, kissing our children goodnight, while knowing full well she had just spent hours in another man's arms. I wouldn't let her get away with it. So I began to plan. The first step was to continue gathering evidence. Carlos had already done most of the work, but I needed more. I needed irrefutable proof, something that would completely destroy any attempt Sarah could make to justify her actions. I started by installing spyware on her phone. It was shockingly easy. One night, while she was in the shower, I accessed her phone and installed an app that allowed me to see everything: texts, calls, emails, even real-time GPS tracking. Within hours, I had full access to her conversations. And what I found disgusted me. She wasn't just sneaking around. She was laughing about it. "Tom, I can't wait to see you again. You looked so sexy today in that dress. Sarah, you always know just what to say. Wish I could have stayed longer." Winky face. They had their own little world, a place where I didn't exist, where our family was nothing more than an inconvenience to be worked around. I clenched my fists as I read through their intimate messages, my jaw tightening with every line. She had given him the words that used to belong to me. "Tom, when do I get to have you for an entire night?" "Sarah, soon, baby. I just need Jack to take the kids for a weekend trip." I nearly smashed the phone against the wall. She was planning to use me to clear her schedule so she could spend the entire weekend in his bed. Not happening. The hardest part was keeping up appearances, especially for the kids. They were too young to understand what was happening, too innocent to see the storm that was brewing right in front of them. I refused to let Sarah's selfishness take away their happiness. So I played my role perfectly. I still made pancakes on Saturday mornings, still took them to the park on Sundays, still read bedtime stories and tucked them in at night. And in those moments, when Lily curled up against me with a sleepy smile, when Oliver's tiny fingers clung to mine as he drifted off to sleep, I questioned everything. How could Sarah risk this? How could she look at our children, our perfect, beautiful children, and choose a cheap affair over the family we had built? I watched her tuck Lily in one night, brushing her fingers through our daughter's hair, and I felt nothing but disgust. She didn't deserve them. She didn't deserve me. I needed Sarah to believe she was safe. That was the only way I could control the outcome. So, I started acting like the loving, clueless husband again. I asked her about her day. I brought her coffee in bed. I even suggested she take a self-care weekend, exactly what she had been hoping for. Her eyes lit up when I mentioned it. "Really? You don't mind watching the kids?" she asked, her tone casual, but I could see the excitement behind her eyes. "Of course not," I said, forcing a smile. "You deserve a break." She had no idea she had just walked straight into my trap. The weekend Sarah was supposed to sneak away with Tom. I made a change to her plans. Instead of taking the kids on a trip, I surprised them with a visit to a local play cafe near the city center. And who just happened to be there? Tom's wife, Jessica. It was the first time we met in person, and the look on her face when I introduced myself told me she already knew. "Jessica," I said smoothly, extending my hand. "I think it's time we talked." She stared at me for a long moment, before finally shaking my hand. "Yes," she said. I think it is. Jessica and I sat in a quiet corner of the cafe while our children played, oblivious to the destruction that was unfolding around them. I've known for a while, she admitted, stirring her coffee absently. I didn't want to believe it. I nodded. Same here. We exchanged everything. The messages, the photos, the details of how long this had been going on. Are you sure you want to go through with this? She asked finally, looking at me with something close to sympathy. I'm sure, I said. I need them to know that they won't get away with this. She nodded, a small, bitter smile playing on her lips. Then let's make sure they remember it. And just like that, the plan was in motion. Sarah and Tom thought they had won, that they were going to enjoy a blissful, stolen weekend together. They had no idea what was coming. This wasn't just going to be a confrontation. It was going to be an execution. The air inside the hotel lobby was warm, filled with the soft murmur of conversations and the occasional chime of an elevator. People passed by with suitcases, laughing couples checked in at the front desk, and the scent of fresh coffee lingered from the nearby cafe. Sarah had no idea I was standing just a few feet away. She was at the bar, sipping a cocktail, her long legs crossed elegantly as she laughed at something Tom had whispered into her ear. She looked completely at ease, completely at home in his presence. The woman I had spent 10 years loving had become someone else, someone I no longer recognized. Jessica stood beside me, her nails digging slightly into the palm of her hand as she watched the scene unfold. Her breathing was slow and controlled, but I could see the tension in her shoulders, the quiet rage simmering just beneath the surface. She looks happy, Jessica murmured, her voice tight. She does, I agreed. Sarah lifted her phone, typing something quickly before setting it down. A second later, my own phone vibrated in my pocket. Sarah, miss you already, babe. I'll call you before bed. The audacity. I exhaled through my nose, my grip tightening around the glass of water I had ordered earlier. Ready? I asked Jessica. She straightened, smoothing down her dress as she nodded. Let's do this. I stepped forward, crossing the distance between us in 4 slow, deliberate strides. I saw Tom catch sight of me first. His relaxed posture stiffened, his smile faltering for a fraction of a second. Sarah, still unaware, took another sip of her drink, her gaze flickering to the menu. Then she noticed him staring at something behind her, and when she turned and saw me, everything changed. Her breath hitched. Her fingers trembled around the rim of her glass. I watched as her mind worked through the impossible reality of this moment. Her husband standing in the very place she had sworn she wouldn't be. Jack, she breathed, her voice barely above a whisper. I tilted my head slightly, letting the silence stretch between us. Her eyes darted to Jessica, who stood just behind me, arms crossed over her chest, her expression unreadable. Then to Tom, who looked like a man seeing his executioner for the first time. The color drained from Sarah's face. I could see it now. The panic, the desperate scrambling for a way out. Wow, I finally said, letting out a low chuckle. Didn't expect to see you here, honey. Sarah's lips parted, but no words came out. Tom tried to recover first, clearing his throat as he forced an uneasy smile. Jack, hey, this is... Careful. I cut in smoothly, lifting a hand. Choose your next words wisely. The tension at the table was suffocating now. Sarah blinked rapidly, as if willing herself to wake up from this nightmare. I can explain, she stammered. Jessica let out a dry laugh beside me. Oh, please do, Sarah. I would love to hear how you explain this. Sarah's head snapped toward her, finally putting the pieces together. Jessica gave her a slow, knowing smile. Oh, Sarah whispered, her voice cracking. Oh my God. I slid into the empty seat across from her, folding my hands on the table. Let's talk, sweetheart, I said. Tell me, how long have you been fucking your boss? Sarah's entire body flinched. A few guests turned toward us, catching the sharpness in my voice. Tom shifted uncomfortably, looking like he wanted to be anywhere but here. Sarah shook her head, tears welling in her eyes. Jack, please. Not here. No, I said firmly. Here is perfect. Jessica leaned in slightly, her eyes locked onto Tom. I'm curious too, she said. Tell us, Tom, was it worth it? Throwing away your marriage, your family, your entire goddamn life for what? A cheap hotel and stolen kisses in the dark? Tom swallowed hard. Jessica smirked, reaching into her purse. You know, she said, I thought I'd be more emotional about this. More hurt. But mostly, she pulled out a thick manila envelope and slammed it onto the table. Mostly, I'm just done. Sarah's eyes darted to the envelope, realization flickering across her face. Tom hesitated before reaching for it, his fingers trembling slightly. He opened it, flipping through the photos, the text printouts, the evidence. And then, his face collapsed. Jessica's voice was cold, sharp as a knife. You've been served, asshole. Sarah gasped, reaching for me now, her hands grasping at my arm. Jack, please, I made a mistake. I still love you. I stood, yanking my arm away from her grip. You don't get to say that to me, I said, my voice quiet but lethal. Tears spilled down her cheeks. What about the kids? She whispered. Please, Jack. Please, don't do this to them. I exhaled slowly, letting those words settle between us. Then, I reached into my own pocket and pulled out a small white envelope. I tossed it onto the table. Sarah's fingers trembled as she picked it up, tearing it open with desperation. Her breath hitched violently when she saw what was inside. One-way plane ticket. For me. And for our children. I let her realize what it meant. That I wasn't just divorcing her. I was taking them with me. She lifted her head, and for the first time that night, I saw something beyond regret in her gaze. I saw true, unfiltered fear. I leaned down, just enough to whisper in her ear. This is what you chose, I murmured. Then, without another word, I turned and walked away. And I never looked back. The drive home was silent. My grip on the steering wheel was tight, my knuckles turning white as I replayed the scene over and over in my head. The look on Sarah's face when she saw that plane ticket, that was the moment she truly understood. That was when the reality of her choices crashed down on her like a tidal wave, drowning her in the consequences she never thought would come. Jessica had walked out of that hotel without a single tear, her posture straight, her expression unreadable. I respected that. She had taken her pain and transformed it into power, making sure that Tom felt the weight of what he had done. But me? I felt nothing. No satisfaction. No victory. Just a cold, empty space where my love for Sarah used to be. When I pulled into the driveway, the house was dark, quiet. My mother had put the kids to bed already, just like I had asked. She had been hesitant when I told her what was happening, but she didn't ask too many questions. She knew I was a man of logic, of calculated decisions, and if I had come to this point, it meant there was no turning back. I stepped inside and exhaled slowly, shutting the door behind me. My body ached, not from exhaustion, but from the sheer emotional weight of the last few hours. Then, as if the universe wasn't done with me yet, my phone vibrated. Sarah. I stared at the screen, my thumb hovering over the decline button. But at the last second, I changed my mind and picked up. She was crying. Jack, she sobbed. Please, please don't do this. I leaned against the kitchen counter, pinching the bridge of my nose. What exactly do you think I'm doing, Sarah? You're leaving. Her voice cracked. You're taking the kids. You can't just, Jack, please. I know I messed up, but don't do this to me. I closed my eyes for a brief moment, letting her words wash over me, letting them settle deep in my chest. Then, I laughed. A bitter, humorless sound that made Sarah pause mid-sob. Don't do this to you? I repeated, my voice laced with disbelief. Are you serious right now? You destroyed our family, Sarah. You made that choice the second you crawled into bed with Tom. It wasn't supposed to be like this, she whispered, her breath shaky. I didn't want to lose you. I shook my head. But you did. A silence stretched between us, thick with the weight of everything unsaid. I could hear her breathing on the other end, the way she was trying to hold herself together. But she had no right to fall apart. Not after what she had done. I still love you, she finally said. I didn't hesitate. No, you don't, I said flatly. You love the idea of me. the security, the home, the man who made your life easy. But love? No, Sarah. Love doesn't do what you did. Another broken sob. I can change, she whispered. Please, Jack. I'll do anything. I ran a hand through my hair, closing my eyes. I don't want you to change. I just want you gone. The finality of those words hung in the air. Sarah let out a shaky breath. Can I see the kids? They're asleep, I said. And from now on, we'll do this through lawyers. I could feel the moment her heart broke completely. Jack. But I had nothing left to say. I ended the call. The silence that followed was deafening. I exhaled, rubbing my hands over my face before heading upstairs. Lily's bedroom door was slightly ajar, the soft glow of her nightlight casting a warm hue over her tiny sleeping figure. I stepped inside quietly, watching the rhythmic rise and fall of her chest. She looked so peaceful, so innocent. How would I ever tell them the truth? How could I explain that their mother had thrown everything away? Oliver was curled up in his crib, his tiny fingers twitching in his sleep. My son. My boy. I clenched my jaw, fighting back the burn in my throat. I would protect them. From the pain. From the lies. From her. I pulled the blankets up over Lily's small frame, pressing a gentle kiss to her forehead. I love you, I whispered. Then I did the same for Oliver, my heart aching with every step. This wasn't how our family was supposed to end. But at least now, I could make sure their future was better. The next morning, before the sun had even risen, I started packing. Clothes, toys, important documents. I had already spoken to my lawyer. The divorce papers were drafted. The custody battle would come next, but with the evidence I had, Sarah wouldn't stand a chance. By the time she realized what was happening, by the time she even had the chance to fight back, I would already be gone. Because I wasn't just leaving her. I was erasing her. From my life. From our future. From everything. The morning was eerily quiet. No text from Sarah. No desperate phone calls. Just silence. It almost felt like the world itself was holding its breath, waiting for the inevitable fallout. The suitcases were packed, neatly lined up by the front door. Lily's favorite stuffed bear was tucked under her arm as she slept, and Oliver's toy train was still clutched in his tiny hands. They had no idea their world was about to change. Neither did Sarah. I checked my watch. Jessica would be here soon. She had insisted on driving us to the airport, ensuring Sarah wouldn't have a last-minute opportunity to manipulate the situation. I had thought of everything. Then, a knock at the door. I tensed, expecting Sarah. Instead, it was my mother. Her eyes scanned the bags, then settled on me with quiet concern. Jack, she said softly, stepping inside. Are you sure about this? I met her gaze, unwavering.
Yes,
She sighed, closing the door behind her. She hesitated, choosing her words carefully. The kids deserve to have their mother, Jack. They deserve better than her, I said coldly. She made a mistake. She destroyed this family, I corrected, my voice firm but calm. She didn't just cheat on me. She lied to our children. She laughed about it behind my back. She made a choice, Mom. Now she gets to live with it. Mom pressed her lips together, watching me carefully. And what happens when they ask for her? They won't. She exhaled, rubbing a hand over her face. Jack, I love you, but you're not thinking straight. You're making decisions based on rage, not reason. I shook my head. I've never thought clearer in my life. Before she could argue, another knock came. This time, it was Jessica. She didn't need to say anything. The finality in her eyes told me she was ready. It was time to go. I turned back to my mother. Are you coming with us to the airport, or are you staying? Her shoulders sagged slightly, but she nodded. I'll come. I woke the kids gently, whispering that we had a big adventure ahead. They rubbed their sleepy eyes, too groggy to question why we were leaving so early. As I carried Oliver downstairs, Lily yawned and reached for my hand. Where's Mommy? She asked. I felt my stomach tighten. She's not coming, sweetheart. Her little brow furrowed, but she didn't push. That, more than anything, broke me. She already knew something was wrong. The drive to the airport was smooth, almost unsettlingly so. The roads were still empty. the world just beginning to stir. Jessica kept glancing at me from the driver's seat, as if waiting for me to break down, to show some sign that I was second-guessing this. But I wasn't. When we finally pulled up to the departure lane, she put the car in park and turned to me. "This is it," she said. I nodded. "This is it." She hesitated. "Are you going to tell her where you're going?"
No.
Sarah didn't deserve that closure. Jessica let out a slow breath, then reached into her purse, pulling out a thick envelope. "This is for you," she said, handing it over. I frowned, taking it. "What is it?" She smirked slightly. "Just open it when you land." I stared at her for a moment before nodding. "All right." She reached out then, squeezing my arm. "You're doing the right thing, Jack." I didn't answer. I just opened the door, stepped out, and grabbed our bags. Mom held Lily's hand, guiding her toward the entrance, while I carried Oliver in my arms. As I turned to give Jessica one last look, her expression softened. "Take care of yourself," she said quietly. I gave her a small nod, and then I walked away. The flight was smooth. The kids fell asleep almost instantly, their small bodies curled against me as the plane cut through the sky, leaving everything behind. It wasn't until we landed, until I had checked into the hotel, that I finally opened Jessica's envelope. Inside was a divorce settlement draft. But that wasn't what caught my attention. It was the note she had tucked inside. "Check your email. You'll thank me later." Frowning, I grabbed my laptop and logged in. And then, I saw the video. I clicked on it, my pulse hammering. It was security footage from the hotel, and it showed something I never expected. Sarah, not running after me, not crying over losing her family. No, she was with Tom, laughing, like I had never existed. I stared at the screen, my entire body going numb. She had never planned to fight for me. She had never planned to beg, to fix things, to change. Because in her mind, I was already nothing. I let out a slow, empty breath, then closed the laptop. I had thought my revenge was complete. But now it had only just begun. I sat in the dimly lit hotel room, staring at the frozen image on my laptop screen. Sarah, standing beside Tom in the hotel lobby, her lips curled into a smile, her hand resting on his arm like nothing had changed, like I had never mattered. My pulse pounded in my ears, my vision tunneling as I clenched my fists. All those tears, all those desperate pleas over the phone. Lies. She wasn't mourning our marriage. She wasn't shattered by the loss of her children. She was celebrating. She thought she had one. I closed the laptop with a controlled breath, my mind sharpening. She had no idea what was coming. I wasn't just going to take away her family. I was going to take away everything. Sarah had spent years crafting an image of herself. The perfect wife, the devoted mother, the respected professional, and I was about to burn it all to the ground. With a calm I didn't fully feel, I picked up my phone and made a single call. Carlos answered on the second ring. "It's done?" "Not yet," I said, my voice cold. "But it will be soon. I need you to leak it." There was a pause. "You sure?" I exhaled. "I want everyone to know what she is." A low chuckle. "Consider it handled." I ended the call, my heart pounding like a war drum. Sarah thought she had escaped the consequences of her betrayal. She was about to learn what real loss felt like. 2 days later, the storm hit. It started with a single anonymous email, sent to Sarah's boss, her coworkers, our neighbors, her friends, even the school where she volunteered. Attached were the photos, the messages, the receipts from the hotels. A detailed timeline of her affair, mapped out with brutal precision. And then, the video. The security footage of Sarah and Tom laughing while her husband packed up and took their children away. It spread like wildfire. By noon, Sarah was fired from her job. By evening, she was locked out of all her social media accounts, flooded with messages of outrage and disgust. By the next morning, her face was on the front page of local gossip sites. Sarah Carter, the picture-perfect suburban mom, exposed as a liar, a cheater, and a fraud. And Tom? He lost everything too. His wife took the kids and filed for divorce the same day. His company dropped him like dead weight. His reputation was ruined beyond repair. I had buried them both, and it still wasn't enough. I knew the second Sarah realized it was me. The phone calls came first. Voicemail after voicemail, her voice shaking, begging, screaming. Then, the texts. Sarah, Jack, please call me. I need to talk to you. Sarah, how could you do this to me? Sarah, you ruined my life. I didn't respond. Then, in the dead of night, my hotel room phone rang. I let it ring twice before picking up. Sarah's ragged breathing filled the line. Jack. I leaned back in my chair, exhaling slowly. Sarah, a broken sob. You destroyed me. You destroyed yourself, I corrected. I just made sure everyone saw it. Another sob. I lost my job. My friends won't talk to me. Even my own parents. Her voice cracked. Please, please, Jack. I can't do this. I stared at the ceiling, my grip tightening on the receiver. You didn't think about this when you were screwing your boss, did you? Jack, I'm sorry, she whispered. I swear to God, I'm sorry. I closed my eyes. I don't care. Silence. Then, so soft I almost missed it. I have nothing left. For the first time, I hesitated. She sounded genuinely broken. Not the manipulative crying from before. Not the fake regret. This was real. For a moment, I felt something almost like pity. But then I remembered Lily asking why Mommy wasn't coming with us. I remembered watching her sleep while knowing Sarah had chosen another man over her own family. I opened my eyes, my resolve returning. You made your bed, Sarah, I said quietly. Now lie in it. I hung up the phone, and this time, she didn't call back. A week later, I stood at the edge of the beach, watching the waves crash against the shore. Lily giggled as she ran ahead, her feet kicking up wet sand, Oliver trailing behind her with clumsy little steps. They were happy, laughing, free. For the first time in months, I felt peace. Sarah was nothing more than a memory now, a ghost of a woman who had once meant everything to me. I had one, and for the first time, I realized that was all I ever needed.